Hello, welcome to Ready Set Action. Today you're joining Christina Whitmer and Deborah Hor. We are going to talk about employer branding in 2025, and we look forward to this very relevant topic. Welcome, Deb.
Hi, Christina. How are you doing today?
I am good. I'm ready.
You're ready? You're always ready.
See what,
I,
yeah, what's going on?
I am very excited about this topic. Of course, employment branding is near and dear to my heart, and it's something that we focus on every day at Impact Talent, but especially as we're heading into 2025. So, very excited to have this conversation with you.
Awesome. Well, great. It's a great topic. I mean, the talent, the talent landscape is changing a lot. There's a lot of competition when it comes to finding the best talent. So I think, to me, this is a big differentiator. So would love to hear just the basics. I mean, why don't you start us off to figure out what is it? What really makes it a thing? So
Yeah, employer branding in short is all about attracting and retaining top talent. And the competition for skilled workers is still very fierce. That has not slowed down, regardless of what the unemployment rate is telling people.
yes.
But, what's happened over the last 3 to 4 years is candidates have really become increasingly discerning about not just looking for a paycheck, but they really want to look at, for a company that aligns with their values, that offers growth opportunities and really provides a positive work environment. So employer branding helps an organization to showcase all of that and make sure that candidates understand what's in it for them.
Very good. That makes sense to me. That really does make sense. And I totally agree, regardless, like the quality talent, nobody will argue that there's not a shortage of certain skill sets and certain, hard skills and soft skills, if you ask me. So when you say that, like, what are the factors driving this importance? Like, what's happening that makes employer branding so important right now? It's 2025.
I'd say there's a couple of factors that are at play, but the first is Gen Z is really entering the workforce in full force this year. So that generation has different expectations and priorities than previous generations. They are more focused on valuing purpose, the transparency, and the social impact that an employer is making. And so, if you are attracting that type of talent in 2025, then you really need to align your employer brand message with what, and allow it to resonate with those values that Gen Z is seeking. And, most recently, really ever since the election in November, we've seen a lot of brands kind of take backpedaling on DEI initiatives, and they're going away from that area. But then we've seen other brands say, yes, we're continuing with our diversity, and equity, and inclusion initiatives, brands like Apple and Costco and Microsoft. And those brands are really saying, we are going to leverage these initiatives, continue to leverage them as talent attractors because they understand how important it is to the talent that they seek. And also, there's a business case to be said for continuing with DEI as well. So, when you make that part of the employer brand message, what we have found is those organizations that embrace that and really leverage DEI in all that they do have higher revenues, have lower turnovers. So all of that goes to the bottom line and helps to make a company more successful. So if you're just depending on what the makeup of your organization is and being able to really talk completely and showcase all of those things to potential candidates is really going to help you differentiate.
Okay. That makes sense. I think, I worked in recruitment advertising many moons ago, so a long time ago. But it was always the business case was partially like, in order for a company to be awesome and to grow and to be the best, they need that diversity of people, which usually equals diversity of ideas and thought processes and all that kind of stuff. So it's a huge reason that people can usually get behind that. So that'll be interesting to see some of those stories evolve. I've seen some of them too. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah. Just curious a little bit about, remote and hybrid work. And then, I mean, I read the return, I think I posted a week ago about the return to office announcements and like, how is that impacting employer branding? I call BS when I hear somebody say we're doing that because I can't measure productivity. Because I just don't like, really? Like, how do you not know if people are valuable to your organization? So how do you think that's affecting the employer branding?
Yeah. I think, it's interesting because in 2020, we went into the pandemic really knowing, for the most part, just one type of work environment, and that was in the office, right? I mean, there were exceptions to that. I, of course, have been working remote for about 18 years now, but yeah, so there was a percentage of us that were in remote roles, but the majority of people were in the office. So now we've got these three different environments going on. We've got the office workers, we've got the hybrid, and we've got the remote.
Right.
So it's very, very important as part of the employer brand for you to be able to state clearly, like, what type of work environment you are offering for
Mhm.
either the position or the entire organization, right? Um, and then to be able to say how you support that environment. So, from a remote standpoint, some of the challenges that we saw in 2020 were the new people coming into entry level roles or first time in a new organization and really fumbling about understanding the overall culture of that organization because they weren't on site for that, right?
Yeah.
So being able to communicate that connectivity for remote
Mhm.
workers is going to be key in demonstrating that in your employer brand. And also, how do you create a sense of community for a remote workforce in your environment is important for you to also relay out there in your employer branding. Similarly, when you are entirely returned to office, you can talk about the pizza parties on Friday or
Mhm.
whatever else is going on, to create that type of community in your messaging along those lines. And don't feel like, okay, well, we're mandated on all of us being in the office 5 days a week. And how are we going to recruit for that? If that's your reality, that's your reality. So, you know, be truthful about, right?
Yeah. That's a good reminder. I remember in the early COVID, and I was thinking, a lot of people were struggling. A lot of people were also enjoying sort of that switch and opening those doors. But I do remember thinking that the entry level and the people junior to a role were probably having more struggles than others without that shadow. You know, I think we do a better job now with the ability to shadow with technology, like
Yeah.
Loom videos I use a lot to just record the things I'm doing, and
Yeah.
also create some kind of connection, right? So I feel like technology really jumped a lot in that point. So what are your thoughts on, technology and employer branding? Like how has it shaped it in your opinion?
You know, it it really has transformed how we build and communicate the employer brand because, we've had social media, online reviews, the employer review sites like Glassdoor. There are other things that are coming onto the market like Blue Sky and Reddit and things of that nature. So companies are really needing to actively manage that online presence and really engage with candidates across all of those multiple channels. AI and automation can help with some of that, but I see AI and automation also impacting the personalization of the candidate experience and the streamlining of the recruitment processes. So it's kind of, taking those hurdles out of the way of candidates to really get the information that they need in a timely fashion and make an informed decision about whether or not they want to work for that organization.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I guess as you look at all of that, I mean, I'd love to hear your thoughts on maybe some of the key strategies you think that the organization should focus on. If they're maybe they don't know that this is a need, but maybe they do know there's some issues here. What are some strategies you think they should focus on?
Yeah, I think that the top one, of course, is authenticity.
Mhm.
Candidates can spot BS a mile away. We all can, right? So being genuine and really reflecting on what your company's unique culture is, the values are, is going to be so important.
Mhm.
And please do not try to be something that you are not or misrepresent yourself in any way. It I know that you're trying to get good candidates in the door, but you don't want them turning around and walking back out in
Right.
5 days or 5 minutes. You wanna attract the ones that are going to feel like they fit in and, they're gonna give their all to the organization.
Yeah. Because I would say anybody that's feels like they had a bait and switch thing, they're going to be more frustrated, more likely to talk bad about the experience and things like that. So I would,
Absolutely, and of course, negative feedback is shared so much faster
yeah,
and amplified so much more than positive feedback.
so, yes, that's authenticity top of the list. I like that. What about like employee advocacy? What do you
Yeah,
think about that?
yeah, that is so incredibly powerful, right? Your employees are your best brand ambassadors. Forget about the influencers. These brand ambassadors that are your employees are worth their weight in gold because their organic content that they create, if you allow them, and please allow them to share their experiences of working for you on social media or in other ways, like videotape them and put that up on your career site or use that as links in your outbound messaging to potential candidates. But really leverage that because that type of content is much more credible than anything that your company can say about itself or, produce in a corporate video kind of thing. Nobody's buying into those corporate videos. So just stop
Mhm.
spending thousands of dollars on those
Mhm.
and let it look real, let it look authentic.
Sounds good. So, what about measuring? It's tough. Any branding is tough often, but what about measuring the effectiveness of employer branding efforts?
It's hard, right? It's like one of those dotted types of things where you can't really draw necessarily the straight line that the CFO wants to see, but there are things, key metrics that are pretty essential that we look at with our clients, and that's application rates, time to hire. Are we turning them, are we converting them faster into the pipeline and getting them hired? And then retention. Because if we're doing a good job with the employer brand message, we're recruiting the right types of talent into the organization and they're staying longer. And then the Net Promoter Score, NPS, for candidates or for hiring managers, because, sometimes they're needing some training on how to do a better job in
Yeah.
that process, right? So, that data is really going to help you understand what's working and what needs improvement. And it's really just like any other type of marketing. You've got to track those metrics and
Mhm.
then refine as you go along.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing I wanted to mention with that is that refreshing of the employer brand, right? If you have not refreshed your brand, if it was earlier than 2021, you probably need to take a look at in 2025, prioritizing that in the budget to give that a refresh
Mhm.
because just so much has changed,
Yeah.
since the pandemic. And you need to look like you're with it. And
Mhm.
that you're at the same point in life as the candidates are. So it's really, really critical that you take a look at that and prioritize that in the budget for 2025.
Yeah. It's funny, that makes sense to me. I feel like as much as I knew about this topic in some ways, I don't think I've ever really specifically told somebody that it's time to check this out. It's time to look at it because look at all of the shifts in your audience, like in your employee base. Like that's smart. I think it's something that needs to be looked at more frequently than certainly what it is. So,
3 years, is usually a good time. And
mhm,
then, maybe every 5 years, really consider replacing your employer brand.
yeah. So, any sort of final words? Like, why don't you give me that to do list? What do I have to do?
Well, we
Yeah.
did talk about a lot today,
Yes.
but
Yes.
I think the key things are so understanding the expectations of the workforce. We talked specifically about Gen Z, but there are other aspects of it to consider too. If you're heavily loaded with workforce that are in their 40s and 50s, those are in that sandwich generation, right? Where they're juggling kids and maybe parents that they have to take care of. So
Right.
think about, what are those changing expectations for them? Adapting to the 3 different work environments that we have now with remote, hybrid, and return to office. And how are you promoting that in your employer brand? Leveraging technology. How are you making sure that you're managing your reputation across all of those various channels, as well as using technology to impact the experience? Focusing on authenticity and transparency throughout everything that's part of the brand, empowering those employee advocates to be your brand ambassadors and to showcase what it's like to work there on a day to day basis and what they get out of working for you as an employer. And then measuring the impact of those efforts and refining them along the way.
Yeah. Nice. It's a good list. That's doable, I think. I can do.
I hope it's doable, and
It's doable.
if you need a hand, give me a call.
Very good. This is great. Thank you for sharing this information. I think it's really timely as we hit 2020. I think now is the right time to refocus on this. We will post some information in the chat so people know how to get a hold of you if they need more information. And for everyone listening, thank you. We appreciate your attention and your time and the ideas that you share. It's Ready, Set, Action with Deborah Horowitz and Christina Whitmer. And you can follow us on Spotify, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, everybody.